Good morning, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to the prompts for the 31 Days of Witchcraft. These are a set of prompts that were created by the beautiful Heather Carter. I will have a link to her channel down below. Check it out. Go subscribe to her. I adore her channel. I adore her content. And she has a lot of really interesting things to say. So go check it out. I am answering for day 15 today, which is about Coven or Solitary. If you're a Coven... I haven't had coffee. I say it every morning when I do this, mostly to apologize for my all over the placeness. But the question is if you work as a solitary practitioner or in a coven, and then pros and cons of each, if I remember correctly. So in a nutshell, did I close my... Yeah, I did. Okay. In a nutshell, which I don't know why I would say that because there's no nutshell here. I have spent time as both a solitary practitioner and as part of a coven, and there are pros and cons of each. But I will say, I don't think I've ever spent time in a coven where I didn't also do solitary work. So in that way, there was a bit of a having your cake and eating it too kind of situation where I felt like I did get a chance to explore the best of both worlds. I've had some really profound time and moments in Coven. And I've also had some incredibly profound moments in my solitary practice. I will say that the way that my practice looks today I couldn't even think of how that might work in a Coven situation. Sorry, I'm like distracted by everything around me because my practice is a little all over the place, and it's got a lot of things that weren't a part of my practice 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And the last time I did any meaningful coven work would probably be about 15 years ago. Well, probably less than that. Probably like 13, 14 years ago. The beauty of a coven, at least in my experience, if you have joined a coven of people who you feel very bonded with and who you feel like you can really trust, is that there is a depth to the work that you can do with one another. And there's also a way you can support one another in that magical work. Some of the most profound experiences I had, magically speaking, with my former coven was when I was somehow being able to be a part of something big magically that one of them needed to do for themselves. And having them offer that same support in return was really beautiful and really empowering. And I will say that I feel like sometimes when it depends on where you're at, I guess, on your self-worth journey. And I want to say this the right way, because I think that with any group of people, if you haven't really formed your own identity, if you haven't got a very strong sense of self and you are a part of a very, say, tight friend circle or anything, even like not mundane wise, non-magically speaking, sometimes you can lose yourself a little bit in a group. And that, again, is if you don't have a very strong sense of self yet, if you're not in a place where you really know where you stand, if you really know your own thoughts and feelings super well, your preferences, your ethical foundation is strong, and you know, if you know yourself, then I think coven work can be really, really, really powerful. I'd say the only real con for me, well, there's two main cons I'll mention. In larger covens that are not necessarily made up of a small, tight-knit group of people who know and trust each other really well, but rather a larger group, such as in sort of more public style covens, then the trick can be, there can always be drama in any community, right? There can always be drama that bubbles up, or interpersonal relationship stuff that bubbles up. And the larger and less tight-knit that community is, the more certain there is to be some of that at some point. And that can significantly disrupt, I think, your spiritual practice, because when you feel disharmony in the place that you go to for harmony, that can create a ripple effect that can make you feel pretty lost. But I think that's more a symptom of groups that get very large, or because I do know that the term coven can mean a whole lot of things. When I was kind of growing up in the craft, I saw coven as a smaller, tight-knit group of people who knew each other in person and who practiced together. And technology and everything has changed all of that, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just think the dynamics are different. If you and 3 very, very close friends or 5 really close friends form a coven together, or whatever it might be, you're going to have one kind of an experience. But if you join an existing larger group or structure and there isn't that foundational relationship or an opportunity maybe to build that very in-depth personal relationship, then I think things get a lot trickier. And drama can happen in small groups too. So I'm not saying that. I'm more saying that that would be a potential con for me. And I have been through that in larger groups because while I did have a small tight-knit coven for a long time, I was also part of larger spiritual groups and communities, and there was inevitably some kind of falling out or splintering or big drama or something that happened in those. Any community that happens, right? There's always something. And it really derailed my spiritual path, and it really felt incredibly life-affecting, life-altering when those things happened. But I didn't, once a smaller in-person coven got a little closer, got a little more tight-knit, that stuff just seemed more about the friendships when trouble arose than it did the spiritual path. Wow, I'm not making any sense. Anyway, there are some really profound things you can do in group work. I just think it's really important to be discerning about who you do that with. And I think that's true of anything that you do in a group setting, is just to be discerning and to know what your boundaries are, to know what your limits are, and to have a very strong sense of your personal identity and what you like, are okay with, are interested in pursuing, and all of that stuff beforehand. Because I found that, especially as a baby witch, this is before I really had a coven, but in my real new to the practice days, there was a lot of large communities and large spiritual groups that I interacted with or was a part of. And I did feel kind of like I got swept up in groupthink a bit. And that was just age and inexperience and not having that strong sense of self. But when I'm in my solitary, so just to segue over to solitary practice, in my solitary practice, it's all about my sense of self and my identity and what I need to work on. And the beauty of that is that I'm not holding anybody else back when I have to really, I may spend a couple months on shadow work out of the clear blue sky, and then next couple of months I might be working on astral travel, but that may not align with other people. And I think that it's really empowering and really freeing to sort of have that realm of possibility blown wide open, where you can really focus on what's important to you for your practice in that moment and not be concerned about how that may either pull other people out of focusing on their work or may not align with other people. So for me, really at my heart, I've always been kind of a solitary practitioner. And for me, group work was sort of like a bonus or like an add-on in a way to that solitary work. And it was lovely to get together with people in person for full moon rituals or for Sabbats. And I still find beauty in those things, but I see myself as a solitary practitioner who then shares space with other people when there are opportunities for that, rather than somebody who's seeking out a coven or coven work. So I hope that made sense. I began my practice as a solitary practitioner, and it's no surprise to me that that's where I'm at right now in my practice. But I have so much depth within that. So there's so many different thoughts and feelings on this. I will say that I think it's extremely valuable to have a group ritual experience or a group magical working experience. So whether it's getting together some friends or going to a public ritual if there's one in your area, or going to a witchy gathering where they may be doing some simple group workings, I think those things can be incredibly validating and can be really, really beautiful experiences. And I definitely think if you have the opportunity to do that sort of thing, you should at least give it a shot and see what you think. Because I've had some very memorable and beautiful group experiences that I'm so grateful for. And regardless of whether or not I ultimately choose to work in a coven or work solitary, I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything. And so many of them helped me to grow on my path. And so many of the people that I met through those experiences inspired me and gave me new ways to look at things. And all of them have left a mark on my heart and on my practice, and we're part of that evolution. So I think personally, that where I land is solitary, and then the occasional like working with other people in general. Not so much coven work these days, but man, I wouldn't give up my coven experiences. Not even the ones that came with a handful of intense personal drama. Not even those, because even though those times were difficult, the gifts of the experience were still really beautiful and powerful. And yeah, so it's all good. It's all good. I think the biggest thing is just know yourself. And I think that's an important part of the craft period, is know thyself. And honor yourself and honor where you're at in your practice and in your path. And don't feel like your practice needs to look a certain way or your craft needs to look a certain way. And I think the best part about this being pagan in general is the ability to experiment and explore and sample and see what makes sense and see what resonates and leave the rest behind. So that is my thoughts on that. I hope you have a beautiful Friday wherever you are. Remember to like, share, subscribe, do all the good things, hit the little bell. And if you would like to book a personal tarot reading with me, you can do that over at supportivetarot.com. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.